Right now, the job market is holding up better than expected. Today's government jobs report revealed the U.S. economy added 115,000 jobs in April. That is significantly more than the 65,000 that analysts were predicting. Healthcare and social assistance, they were once again the leading driver of job gains, along with transportation and warehouse industry, as well as retail. The director of economic research for job site Indeed says new job hunters should look toward field seeing job growth, even if they lack a degree in those areas. Some skills may still be a match.
Job seekers who are willing to do that, willing to be a little more flexible, willing to think about their skills more holistically, I think will have better luck in this market.